Time to enter week 5 in college football. This is the final Saturday in September. So 1 month in the books, Mark, and then we head off to October. And we still have a little ways to go. We still haven't really learned a whole lot, except the fact that this year it's definitely a lot more wide open because even Georgia looks a little vulnerable.
Yeah, Georgia does not look quite up to the Georgia we've seen in the past 2 years, but I think that was rather expected, just given the sense that it would be most difficult for them to play up to that level for a third year in a row. So they're coming back to the pack, if you will. The question remains, who is going to surge forward and give Georgia a challenge by the end of the football season?
Okay, so we are going to take a look at each conference. We've also, as usual, have ready to go as far as futures, things of that nature. We'll go over all of that, and we'll use DraftKings for our betting material. So we'll set that in place before we go into that. Let's start, though, with the top conference in the land, and that is the SEC. And there are some big-time college football games in the SEC. Not the biggest, but there are big ones. I mean, just about every game is pretty significant in the SEC this week. And it starts with Georgia, like we're talking about, because they're at Auburn, Mark, and the line is only 2 touchdowns. It's only about 14 and a half. The problem I have, though, with taking Auburn in this spot is that when you look at Georgia's dominance in this series, matter of fact, it started after they lost the regular season game to Auburn back in 2017. And Auburn, a lot of people thought this was Auburn's year. They had a rematch in the championship game. And I believe it was Cadillac Williams. I believe it was, or it might have been, it might have been another running back. I can't remember, but it was a running back for Auburn, and I think it's the one that's on Trevion Williams. I think that's who it was, and he got injured. He wasn't up to par, and that really hurt Auburn's offense. And Georgia won that game, and then all of a sudden the Georgia dynasty began. So since then, Georgia's won 6 straight up and against the spread against Auburn, and have only averaged giving up 9.5 points per game during that span to Auburn. That's the problem I have. Even though it's only 14 points, I mean, if Georgia scores, I don't know. I mean, I guess if they only score in the 20s, you'd feel pretty good that you're going to end up covering. But then again, I mean, Auburn's got a pretty good defense as well. They just have to have the best out of Peyton Thorne, who's had some ups and downs so far since transferring over from Michigan State.
Unquestionably. The question is whether or not Auburn can contain Georgia. They've been contained pretty much this football season. And Auburn brings a pretty good defense into the football game as well. I think they're allowing like 16 points a game. If they can contain and keep that lid on Georgia, they can give themselves a chance to win the football game. Rather than the history, I'm looking more at what's going on there right now. And I think Hugh Freeze might be the extra elixir that Auburn needs that they haven't had in the past, because he knows how to get his football teams up for games, especially in the role of an underdog.
Next up, by the way, Georgia 0-2-1 against the spread. So they haven't fared well so far. Again, that's all part of us or Vegas even, not liking or believing that they're better than they are so far. And a lot of it also may have to do with the fact that 2 of their top offensive players, Ladd McConkey, who hasn't played at all this year, and Kendall Milton, the running back's been out a couple of games. And then, of course, keeping in mind they have a first-year starting quarterback. So anything's possible. Auburn's got the coaching, as you mentioned. We'll see if Georgia, who struggled a little bit with South Carolina a couple of weeks ago, we'll see on the road, the first big road test, we'll see if they pass it at 3:30 on Saturday. Next up, speaking of South Carolina, they are at Tennessee, and Rattler's actually having another solid season. He's up to 74% completion percentage, and he's doing this without his top receiver. Antoine Wells has been out for most of the season. He's had a foot injury. Matter of fact, he scored a touchdown he scored the first touchdown for South Carolina in the Georgia game. Then he got hurt, did not play the rest of the game. And then, of course, Georgia came back and won in the second half. They still have survived basically on Xavier Legette, who's had a nice breakout campaign. But without Wells, it's been a little bit disappointing. Don't forget, this was the team, South Carolina, that upset Tennessee last year as a 23-point home dog. This is when Tennessee was just flying high and Hendon Hooker and all that stuff. And then it was a 63-38 upset. South Carolina over Tennessee. And so you would think there's going to be some revenge maybe. I get that. But it's a lot of points. It's 12.5. It's almost 4-1 on the money line. And I'm taking, I was even considering the money line in this one, but I'm going to go ahead and take the points. I like South Carolina in this game. I think I think it should remain a pretty close game. I'm still not sold that Tennessee is like they were last year, especially with Milton instead of Hooker.
I agree. I think Joe Milton is nowhere close to what Hendon Hooker was last football season here. And this is a South Carolina team whose personality is just what you said, Greg. They get up as big underdogs against good top quality teams. They almost pulled the rug out on Georgia earlier this year as a 26-point underdog. So they're not going to be intimidated at all by Tennessee in the football game. And I got to give them a mulligan for last week. I know they win the game against Mississippi State, got out yarded almost 100 yards. But you know they have to have their eye looking forward to this football game here as well. It's going to be a dandy. The question is whether or not Tennessee will be able to extract that big-time revenge they have from last year.
Okay. Also, we have in the East a big matchup between Florida and Kentucky. And, initially when I thought about this game on, like, say, Monday or Sunday, I was like, oh, Kentucky's off to a really good start. This could be a good spot for them. They were a 3-point favorite to begin. But then the more I thought about it and the more I just realized what was going on with Florida, I really got behind them. And I really like I thought that it was the right hire to get Napier in there. I think he's starting to do a really good job. The whole running game and he's done a great job at coaching. We know what he did at Lafayette. It's starting to work here at Florida. He had the big win over Tennessee. If you look at it, they lose to Utah, but outgain Utah in that first game, which is the impressive thing. They've got the 5th-ranked defense in college football. Yes, Kentucky has Devin Leary, and they're 4-0, 3-0 against the spread. But if you look at it, Kentucky's schedule has been pretty weak. They haven't beaten anybody. They had an FCS team and 3 weak FBS teams. So they've beaten nobody. Florida, on the other hand, of course, had the win against, as I mentioned, against Tennessee and the good loss against Utah. Napier is 18-8 ATS as a dog, including 9-1 straight up and against the spread if they are a dog of 4.5 or less. And there's also a really good trend in the playbook guide here as well. They have an 11 straight spread in here that you'll have to get the guide to know what it is. But it's another good one. And even though Kentucky has won 3 out of 6 and covered 6 straight against the Gators, which is very impressive, let's keep in mind, they have not been a favorite in those 6 games. Now they're the favorite. I think it's a little bit of a different ask. I'm taking Florida.
Well, this goes to what I call DIA. And what that basically is, the acronym is dogs, dominating dogs in action, doing it again. You take a look at dominance in the series. How about the Florida Gators? 39-4 straight up the last 43 football games, dog only one time in those 43 football games. One time.
Wow.
So they're going to come in
before
here.
Before this?
Yes, before this. So they're going to come in here as that dog in this particular football game against a Kentucky team who, you mentioned their schedule has been soft, marshmallow soft. And if you look at their stats and you look at the points they've scored, the cuffs and the collars don't match. Kentucky's points they put on the scoreboard don't match the yards they got in the football game. They put up a low total of yards, but somehow amassed a few extra points, largely because of turnovers by the opponent, good field position, who knows what. But when you do it all season long, that catches up with you. And that's exactly what I think will happen to Kentucky in this football game. I think Florida is the better team. And I think Florida wins the football game.
All right. Now let's talk about my favorite pick of the week. Matter of fact, this is my pick on our contest, a weekly contest. It's not my top pick, but it's my college football pick. And even though it's not like it's one really good team against one bad team, it's only a 2-point spread. But I really like LSU in this spot against Ole Miss. And I like them for a couple of reasons. One, we've been talking about them. We're going to get into the futures too in just a sec. We talked about them with the futures that, and look, I'm not going to sit there and push up their futures and talk about what a bargain it is, and I'm putting money on their futures, and then look at a game like this and go pass. I mean, obviously, I'm going to really love this game because if they win, they're probably going to cover. And if they don't win, well, their chances of that national championship deal is pretty much out the window. So of course I'm going to think they're going to win this game. Throw in the fact that Lane Kiffin is 2-12 against the spread at home off a double-digit loss. I love that. I think that the spread is a reaction a little bit of what happened to LSU last week. And I got no problem with Arkansas going head-to-head with LSU because we've talked about it. They're a talented team. This is the SEC. Anything can happen in these games. So I don't care about that game at all, if that's part of the reason. But I'm all over this one. And I'm going to pop up the futures while you go over your analysis. As you see, LSU has gone from, just to show you, I think it does matter what happened in last week's game. They were, I think, 30-1 last week. Now they're 40-1. And all they did was play a game against Arkansas that went down to the wire. Oh, I guess they're not as good as we thought maybe. Maybe there are people that aren't putting money on them this week. I'm not influenced at all by how that game went last week.
I got to say, first and foremost, playing football games is a lot like being a good shopper. My wife is a good shopper. She's always looking for value when she goes out and looks for things. She looks for things that are on sale all the time, but she's looking for value. Well, handicapping football games is the same thing, looking for good value. And when you find teams like LSU who were 30-1 and now they're 40-1 based on one performance, you go out and you grab the 40-1 right now. They didn't lose the game. Okay. They won the game. It's perception. It's perception based on one game. And you've got also here in an LSU football team and a head coach in Brian Kelly, who is outstanding in his career as a single-digit favorite, which is what the role that he's in here. Basically, you're asking him, saying you're the better team, you're the favorite, you're a small favorite, you're expected to win this game, and you don't have to overcome a large amount of points to get the job done. I agree with you. I think Mississippi comes flat off the Alabama football game. LSU proves that they're the much better football team here.
All right. And so out of the futures I have on the screen, I have 3 new ones. And I have the lowest one I've had yet. And that's because I actually, look, I'm looking at Florida, and we'll throw up the futures right now. Let me open this screen so it's a lot bigger. So this is the regular futures that are happening right now. And as you can see there, Georgia is still the favorite. Michigan has gone up a little to 5. Texas, of course, Ohio State, Florida State. But Florida State's in the mix there. But out of those 5 teams, there's only been one out of the 5 that has played and won 2 big games, and that's Florida State. And I take a look at their schedule, and I'm like, hey, wait a second here. They've already got 2 huge wins on their resume. They can lose a game and still run the table. And how are you going to keep them out of the championship game with those 2 wins at Clemson and then beating LSU? As long as LSU has a really good, season like we're expecting. So I think 8-1 is not bad. I think all things considered, it could be a lot worse. That could be 4-1, and I wouldn't be surprised. So that's why, even though it's 8-1, I'm willing to say, okay, now that because I wasn't sure they'd get past Clemson. That's why I didn't take them before. But now 8-1, I didn't think I lost a whole lot. I think there was 16 last week. I know it's half the price, but they could have lost that game. So they're still in a much better situation. So that's why I put them on the board. And I also put on Washington State and UNC as long shots. I know they're long shots for a reason, but it's time to give Washington State credit. And it's also time to wonder just how good Mac Brown and that UNC team is with Drake May at quarterback. So I'll put them in there as well. And I'm going to keep Notre Dame in there because it's just one loss so far. If they do run the table, they're definitely going to be a player in the playoffs again at 45-1. Same situation with LSU. So what do you think in general about not only the future bargains I have thrown up there, but just in general, how they've panned out so far this week?
Well, I have to agree with you. First of all, in Florida State, when you have 2 big notches in your belt like they have, they can lose a football game, as you say, and still make it to the college football playoff. All they need to do is win the ACC, it'd be hard to deny them. The other part of your futures that you're looking at here at 45-1, I think Notre Dame jumps off the page. This is a team that took Ohio State right down to the
Yeah.
last
Final
play.
play. Yeah.
Exactly right. Okay. Now, if they beat Ohio State, what were they last week? 25-1, 30-1? I don't recall.
They had actually, I think they might have been in the teens. Let me see where they were last week. Notre Dame last week, futures, they were 16-1.
Okay. So now they're 45-1. And if they run the table, okay,
Yes.
with one loss on the last play
they're
of
in
the
the
game,
playoffs.
yes, they're in the playoffs. And at 45-1, you'd like to have that team in the playoffs at 45-1.
Yeah.
They have to be played until they prove different. But I'm really impressed with the job Marcus Freeman has done with his football team thus far this season here. Your other plays that you're looking at here, what's going to be, I think, a little bit difficult out of the Pac-12 is there's three monsters in that conference, okay?
Yeah.
Perceived monsters this year. You got Washington, Oregon, and Southern Cal,
Yep.
who might beat up on one another.
Yep.
And one of them is likely to survive, but God forbid they can't afford to have a two-loss team come out of that conference because they're just not going to make the playoff.
No.
So that does remain to be seen. And, Utah being another one of those, the fourth team in that conference that is capable of beating all three of those other teams.
I'm really surprised that there's 60 and the others are 20 and 18 and 16. It's like, I mean, how do we know Cam Rising could walk out there on Saturday? How do you know and if he does, I don't understand why you think Utah is 60 and the other teams are 16. I'm not getting it.
Well, I'll tell you this, if Cam Rising plays Saturday and they win the football game, you can lop that in half. They'll be 30-1. Okay?
There you go.
Yes,
that's why I think it's worth taking a chance on it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, it's look, I think USC, the reason I'm not touching USC and I haven't put them up there because the one difference that USC has with these other teams in this conference, they still have to play Notre Dame.
Yep.
The other teams don't have that type of matchup. So that's going to be a hard ask. And I also, again, because that's the thing, because I don't think there's any way. I think USC will probably drop a Pac-12 game. It's that Notre Dame game. That's the game that's going to decide probably both teams' fates on whether or not one gets to the playoffs or not. All right, moving on. Let's get to that Texas A&M Arkansas game. And I always like this game, even though Texas A&M has been the team that has owned the series lately. They've won 10 out of 11 in the matchups at Arlington, and they've been playing at Arlington. This is like, I guess, the 12th straight year. But the reason I like this is because I've been taking Arkansas the last few years, and I've been cashing each time. They're 4-0-1 against the spread in the last 5. I love them as a dog in this spot, especially with KJ Jefferson. They should have won last year. They had some really bad. I mean, Jefferson got banged up, and there was some things that went on in the game that were kind of fluky, and they really should have won that game. So here they're a 6-point dog. This is actually going to be one of my top plays of the week. I'll probably even take the chance on the money line as well at 2-1. Maybe Arkansas gets Sanders back. That's been something they've been playing without, and we know he's a big part of their offense, and they've still almost knocked off LSU and lost a tough one to BYU. They got to clean up the penalties. There's no question about that. And then there's the talk about Max Johnson taking over for Weigman, and we've talked about this in the preview shows before. I think Max Johnson might be the best backup quarterback in college football. I don't know what he's doing there. I mean, with the day of the transfer portal, why isn't this guy somewhere starting? I just don't understand it. So I don't think that's going to be a big loss. I think Weigman's more talented, no question, but I don't think it's going to be a big loss. I just think maybe it's about time that Arkansas actually beats Texas A&M, but I'll cover myself with the 6.
Well, you can throw a little bit of before Alabama on the potato too.
That's right.
A&M's looking ahead toward this football game. The one thing I'm going to warn listeners out there to be careful of, though, is when you're scanning the schedule, and I made this mistake Sunday night, Arkansas is listed on the bottom of the schedule in this game, so you're assuming that they're the home team. They're not. This game's in Jerry's World in Dallas, Texas, which would be a little bit more favorable to A&M than it would be Arkansas, but Arkansas will travel. They have really, really good fan support, but it is not a home game for Arkansas. But I'm with you. I like KJ Jefferson real well. I think this kid comes with everything he's got every game he plays. And again, I don't want to belabor the point about Jimbo Fisher. I'm not a huge fan of his. But that Alabama game on deck next for A&M, I think, could end up factoring into this game.
All right. And by the way, Alabama is at Mississippi State. That's going to be a late game on Saturday night. And Alabama, they were able to move on with all the offensive quarterback problems. We knew they were going back to that kid, but it's not like he lit up the scoreboard or anything like that. But he's the best of the worst, really, I guess is what they got. Now they just got to try to win ugly this
Right.
year. Yeah, they'll probably beat the Mississippi States of the world. I don't know if I'd bet them to cover these types of spreads, though. That scares me.
Well, I don't know if I would do that either as well. It's a little bit scary and a little bit of concern on my part here, but you don't know until the game sets up and how is it going to set up. So, that's the whole key is what's the situation going into the game.
Yeah, they're the clear better team, and of course, yeah, they should beat Mississippi State by a couple scores, but that offense is scary bad right now.
Yes.
Okay, Big Ten, and the we just talked about the Notre Dame side of things. So what a big win for Ohio State, because now they've put themselves in a position where if they do lose to, say, Penn State or Michigan, they're still in really good shape. They'll end up more than likely in the playoffs, that kind of thing. So that's how big it was. I didn't really tell you the truth. I really didn't. It was a really strange game. I mean, it was so low scoring. It just, I don't know. It just wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't know. I wasn't overly impressed by both teams, or I really didn't like, I wasn't overly disappointed. It was just strange the way it went down. And then, of course, to have the way it ended, and Notre Dame didn't have their 11th guy on the last couple of plays, which is just ridiculously bad. Yeah, that was a big win, though, for Ohio State.
Huge win for the Buckeyes. Ryan Day was as pumped up as I've ever seen him. He went off the rails after the football game.
Yeah.
After Lou Holtz specifically. But he felt good, and the Buckeyes should feel good because that's a tough place to win a football game in Notre Dame, and especially with a team that's as loaded as they appear to be here. So the tip of the hat to Ohio State. They hung in there. They converted a lot of key fourth downs, especially late in the game when they needed them. But they got the job done, and it's going to end up making them that much more formidable moving forward in the Big Ten race here. I'd be stunned if that Ohio State-Michigan game doesn't come down to who represents the Big Ten.
Well, I still I'm still on Penn State. I think they needed to have that game that they had against Iowa to prove how good they could be. They just annihilated the Hawkeyes, and that's not easy to do. I know Iowa is struggling offensively, but that was a very impressive win. Now we got to see how it all works out because see, Michigan and Ohio State just got to play each other. Penn State's got to play them both.
Yes.
So that's what makes it so much more difficult. But it is going to make things interesting because this is the best Penn State team that we've seen in a few years. This is the opportunity now for James Franklin. I know he's not the fans' favorite head coach, and even from the outside perspective. So if he wants to get it done, this is going to be a good year to get it done because, again, you've got a young quarterback at Ohio State. And then we'll segue that into Michigan because that game last week, Rutgers doesn't have a whole lot going on offense. That's just the way it is. But mid-third quarter, there's a pick six on a 4th and 1.
Yep.
If Rutgers, say, scores a touchdown there instead of a pick six, I mean, we're at like a one-score game going into the fourth quarter.
Exactly right.
So that was a misleading result, which is the reason why one of my upsets this week is going to be Nebraska, is because I just got this feeling that there's something missing from this year's Michigan team. I just don't know what it is. They're just I don't know. Maybe they need a slap in the head or something. Maybe because they've had all this winning going on the last few years in regular season games. Maybe they're bored. I have no idea what it is. But there's just something that's just missing from this team. It's almost like they're waiting for some other team to beat them. Or at least scare the hell out of them in the fourth quarter with like a couple of minutes left. And this is the perfect opportunity in my mind for that to happen. And that's why I'm going to roll the dice. I don't know, my cousin's going to be probably real happy that I'm going to do it. Maybe he's not. But look, Michigan is 98th in college football in the red zone percentage. 98th with their
That's not
offense and
good.
that running game.
Nope.
61st offense in college football. And Nebraska has the 24th ranked defense and the second ranked rushing defense. So if you could make Michigan one-dimensional with the way McCaffrey's been erratic with the passing game the last couple of games, I think there's a chance. I really do.
Well, all those Michigan numbers that you just touted, that was all put up at home, by the way.
Yep.
Okay, they haven't been tested on the
That's
road
right.
per se in that sense. And I'm going to also harken back to what you just said about letting the other team make the mistake. It reminds me when I was young and I wanted to get into tennis. I wasn't a very good tennis player, but I wanted to get into it. And my whole philosophy when I played tennis was let the other guy make the mistake.
Yes.
Just return the ball and let
Yeah.
him make the mistake.
Yeah.
And it fared well. I mean, you're not
Yeah.
going to be a champion doing that, but you're going to be competitive. And
Sure.
I think that's what these teams need to do against the likes of Michigan.
The other, I have 3 upset choices this week. I'll right here. Everybody can see what they are in yellow, and there are the rest of the picks. All you have to do is freeze the screen. So, oh no, we don't need that again. As you can see, my second of 3 upsets this week are also in the Big Ten. And I just talked about that Penn State win over Iowa. And Iowa, unless you're playing maybe, I don't know, I can't even think of a team in the Big Ten that they should be favored by double digits against. Maybe Indiana. Okay. People are going to say, well, yeah, but Michigan State, they've packed it in, and can't you see that they just don't care, and blah, 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 blah. And that definitely happens, but I think that happens temporarily. These are still college kids. They don't want to ruin their year. I mean, they want to play football. So I think that's gone. Throw in the fact that they're now away. They're away from the distractions. There's not pressure at home that they have to deal with. I think it's an advantage that they're now in Iowa. They don't have to deal with all the noise. It's them against Iowa and the fans and everything, and I think that's better for them. And, of course, Iowa's offense is terrible. I mean, who are they giving 12.5 points to? Now, I'm taking the upset, but that's because I can see this game going down to the fourth quarter. That's how bad Iowa's offense is. Let's keep this in mind. Their top receiver was a tight end who's out for the year, by the way. Their number 2 receiver now is a tight end.
Well, that sort of fits Kirk Ferentz's style of offense.
They don't even, the receiver doesn't even have over 100 yards.
Oh, my goodness.
And he's the leading receiver right now. They have the 131st ranked offense in college football.
Absolutely terrible. All these ugly numbers here, and it's this kid who gets a contract raise if they meet certain plateaus. They're not going to smell those plateaus. They got to average 25 points a game. Come on, it ain't gonna. They may score 25 points in one game remaining going out here. They're not going to average 25 points a game.
Yeah,
So they're very, very beatable. The question here is realistically, what is the mental approach for Michigan State coming in here, the players? He's officially fired. Mel Tucker is. Is that good, bad, or indifferent? Did the players like him? Were they recruited by him to come here and play for him? That's the thing we don't know. We can't quite get a handle on. But there's no way in the world I'm going to lay Iowa in double digits.
And again, as far as I'm concerned, they've had a couple of games now. So you're a kid. You're not throwing away your season because the coach got fired. Right. You're going to play. And now that I think that they've gotten it out of their system and a couple of games, I think at some point, maybe it's not this week, but at some point, I think that they're going to pull off an upset. And that's why I think this is the perfect one if they're going to do it. So
I can see them being on your potential upset list.
Okay. Let's now switch over to the ACC. And again, Florida State Clemson. That was, of course, a big one. What did you think about the game? Because Clemson, actually, the kid Klubnik had his best game. Maybe he won't be a bad quarterback. A little bit more time and all that kind of stuff. It did seem like Clemson was the better team, but Florida State, they have the better playmakers, and they're able to make those kind of plays that Clemson just can't.
Well, Clemson was the better team. They won the stats by 150 yards in the game. That was a mistake of Dabo Swinney. What did he do to lose a football game like that when the only time he trailed was the final score in overtime?
Yep.
I mean, that's really, really a hard loss for Clemson. And the question is, can they get back up Clemson? But tip of the hat to Florida State. They went into Death Valley, got the job done. Another big bullet, as we mentioned in their repertoire coming in here. I thought it was one heck of a great football game to watch.
Yeah, and again, Clemson now with a couple of losses, so that's it. It's over. It's maybe they could find a way into the ACC championship game, but that's about it. It's going to be even a tough one this week because Syracuse is off to another good start, and this has like been the tough little team that Clemson's been dealing with the last few years. If you look at it, Syracuse has, as far as the series is concerned, 4 of the last 6 games has been decided by 16 points total. Okay, so yes, there've been a couple of blowouts, but 4 of the 6 have been really close. All things combined, 16 points. And even though Syracuse has only won 1 of the 6, they've covered 5 of the 6. They're a 6.5 point home dog. They have the 15th ranked defense, by the way. I know they haven't played a lot of great teams, but it hasn't been bad, not to this caliber. But let's keep in mind who the new defensive coordinator is at Syracuse. That's Rocky Long. And we know what a really good defensive coordinator Rocky Long is, and he's got this Syracuse defense playing well. So, I wonder how Clemson's going to react. 2 losses, national championship season over, and you got to get ready to play on the road this week.
Well, you mentioned those close losses in the series, those 4 times 16 points. If there was a 16-point decision in this football game, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Syracuse that wins by 16, not Clemson. Okay.
Yeah.
Right now they're starstruck. Clemson is after that tough loss they took last week, and Syracuse is on a roll right now. You can't deny that. Their defense is very, very good. Maybe not against the elite competition, but it's very, very good. Top 20. I think you have to look here real hard at Syracuse in this football game.
All right. And then let's talk about the other really big game in the ACC, and that's Notre Dame and Duke. And look, we talked about Notre Dame, and to me, maybe this is like a hedge week because I'm just going to take Duke into 2-1 money line, and I'm going to go against all the trends about Notre Dame dominating the ACC, which they have. Talked about it before. They've covered 13 out of 14 as a road favorite, by the way, in the last 17 overall. They have covered 9 out of 10 against the ACC, and they have won 23 of 24 against ACC teams and 32 of 34. So they've dominated, but if there's a game that maybe the opposition on the ACC side can take advantage of, this could be it. At Notre Dame, coming off that loss, that's going to be tough to come back 1 week. Here you got Duke, and their head coach, Mike Elko, has done a fantastic job. Let's keep this in mind. All 4 of his losses last year were by 8 points or less, and 3 were by 3 points or less. And of course, right now, Mike Elko, as a head coach, 13-4 at Duke. That's a heck of a record. He's been there a year and 4 games. He's 13-4 already. And as a head coach, they covered both games as a home dog last year. So he's got the 2-0 going for him. And they got the 10 offensive starters that have come back from last year's team, including the quarterback. Everybody's seeing what they're doing. They're playing lights out football. This is their chance to let everybody know whether they're for real. But they did beat Clemson at home. Let's keep that in mind. So I just think this is one of those games that, Notre Dame's a good team. But you know what? I think Duke's a good team too. And if I'm going to get a 2-1 on this, I'll take it because I think this is I'm flipping the coin on this game.
Well, it is a tough football game. How will Notre Dame react? Will Marcus Freeman remember to put 11 players out on defense?
That helps.
On every play. Mike Elko, if he continues at this pace, he's going to probably end up being a coach at a major school here sooner than later. Some big bucks are going to be thrown out his way because he's doing a terrific job resurrecting this football program here. My concern here is I was impressed or enamored with the talent Notre Dame has in that Ohio State football game. And I'm still a big Sam Hartman fan. And now you got Sam Hartman going back against Duke in the ACC, which he knows real well, like the back of his hand. So I'm going to lean with Notre Dame here. I don't think they're going to become a completely flat because, number one, they can't afford to.
Sure.
If they only want 1 loss for the season here going into that Southern Cal game, they have to win this football game. And number 2, I think the pressure is more on Duke here in this contest here. The fact that they're having to defend their home field and their fort and doing so well here, the pressure is all on Duke in this football game, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, if you're a Duke fan, you are at this game. So this has got to be the biggest atmosphere and the biggest football ticket that Duke is maybe have ever had. I mean, maybe going back to Spurrier. I mean, I can't imagine it being any bigger right now as far as a ticket for Duke football fans. It'll be a night game as well. If you believe in Duke and think that they're going to be some sort of a surprise national championship team, just keep in mind they're 150 to 1. I haven't put them on my board yet. I'm willing to say, okay, beat Notre Dame. We'll get it down to 50, and I'll be okay with that. Then maybe I'll think about it, but it's still a hard ask.
Well, they're also one of those also received votes type team, okay?
Yeah.
But if they win this football game, they're going to crack the list is what they're going to end up doing.
No doubt.
How nice would this game have been that Notre Dame beat Ohio State and you had to battle these undefeateds here? It would have been probably the most talked about game this week.
All right, now let's go to the Big 12. And there's a lot going on in the Big 12 this week. And there's a few interesting games we're going to get to. First of all, let's talk about, and just a couple of quick notes before we get into the games. Cincinnati's taking on BYU. That game is Friday night. Interesting, the spread went from BYU 3 to now Cincinnati's like a 3-point favorite. Big swing. I'm not sure why, but I guess a lot of money must be on Cincinnati. You know why?
I don't know. I'm puzzled myself to find out what that money's all about. I don't know if it's an anti-BYU thing or it's on Cincinnati, but I'm a little bit surprised at the move.
Yeah. Houston at Texas Tech. The note here is that Tyler Shuck, the quarterback for Texas Tech, is out for the year. So he's gone. So, but Behren Morton, the quarterback for Texas Tech, has played and started games last year. So he's capable. So that's a note there. Baylor, Central Florida. I'm picking Baylor, and I'm going to say this, and I'm taking the points at 13, but I am prefacing this. I'm even willing to go on the money line if, and as quickly as, because I don't know how much the points are going to come down. Probably going to come down, you tell me, it might come down 4 or 5 points.
3 points if Shapen plays, yes.
3?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm happy with that. I'll take 10 and wait for Shapen to come in. Because if Shapen comes in, I'm taking the money line, and I think they could beat Central Florida. Keep in mind, Plumlee's out. I know McLean's a better passer than Plumlee, but he's not a runner. Plumlee could do the dual thing. McLean can't do that. And Baylor, first road game this year, 9-3-1 against the spread as a road dog under Dave Aranda, the head coach at Baylor. So I just wanted to throw that in there as we go to the big 3 that I wanted to really talk about, starting, of course, with the Texas-Kansas game. And this is going to be the other double-digit upset. And I felt comfortable doing that because Kansas has done it before. If you look at it, since 2016, this series, they have had 23 and 31-point outright upsets against Texas. So they have done it before. Now, they haven't done it. They didn't do it, obviously, last year. Texas blew them out. But you could kind of see why they blew them out. The year before, Kansas upset them. And so there was a little revenge kind of thing going. Well, that's gone now. Now the pressure's back on Texas with this game being at home. Let's also keep this in mind. If you look at the quarterbacks that Texas has faced this year, okay? Alabama's quarterback situation, bad. We know that. And in the last 2 teams they played backup quarterbacks. So they had played basically nobody at quarterback as the opposition. First game was against Rice. That might be the best quarterback they played was JT Daniels, the quarterback at Rice. Seriously, it's not even a joke. Yes. Statistically, he was. So that just shows you get Jalen Daniels in here now with Kansas. I don't know how Texas is going to handle him this year's team because they haven't faced anybody like this. So I think this is and I know we've talked up Leipold a lot on this show before. If you look at it, heading into last year's blowout, by the way, Kansas was 2-3 straight up, 5-0 against the spread against Texas in their previous 5 matchups. Then came the blowout. So I'm looking for I'm looking for that to go back to the way it was as far as the series up to that point. And Texas is also 0-2 against the spread at home this year. You're talking 16, 17 points. So I like putting the points definitely on the game. But I feel like, why wouldn't I just gamble? If I'm going to gamble on double-digit upsets, this is a perfect team to gamble on.
I concur. In fact, I used Kansas as one of my plays in the Wise Guy contest this week.
Oh,
I think it's a great spot for them coming into this game here. Not only does Texas have Oklahoma up next, which is always a look ahead bad situation for both teams. I'm still not a Steve Sarkisian fan.
yeah,
I might get sold if he's in the playoffs,
sure.
but until he gets there, I'm going to continue to keep making cases to fade him. And I think he got much the better coaching matchup here in Lance Leipold as opposed to Steve Sarkisian in the football game. And as you said, they've been there before. They've done it. They pulled the rug out on Texas before, and I believe they have the ability to pull the rug out on Texas again this week.
Well, I know we agree wholeheartedly on both of these games. You just mentioned you put them in the contest to Kansas, but I also know it because I watched and produced your Playbook Experts weekly handicapping show, which is available on Playbook Experts YouTube channel. And you one of your top plays was Iowa State, and I was happy to hear that, and not surprised at all either, because Iowa State is one of my 2 5-star picks of the week. So I'm with you. Love Iowa State in this game. I'm going to throw a few bucks on the money line as well. Going to be kind of harder because the offense is what it is. But we said this going into the game last week with Oklahoma, and nothing changed because we talked about the game against SMU. It was only 14-11 in the fourth quarter. Well, what happened against Cincinnati last week? In the mid-third quarter, it's 10-6. So something's just off there. Again, they're winning. And they're able to also cover spreads late. They're able to just barely cover the spread late, and it looks good. 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against spread. The scores look nice, but there's something going on there, sort of like Michigan maybe, that just, I don't know. It's something that maybe that needs to be taken advantage of. Now, whether Iowa State can do it or not, I don't know. But when you look at the numbers, Iowa State has outgained all 3 FBS opponents this year. They have the 20th ranked defense, which you mentioned on the show. And how about this? Matt Campbell, 26-10 against the spread as conference dogs, including 14-2 against the spread, versus an opponent following a straight-up ATS win. 14-2, big number. And Matt Campbell, since he's been coaching Iowa State against Oklahoma, they have played, I don't know, whatever it's been, 6-7 times, has never lost a game against Oklahoma by more than 14 points.
Well, that all fits like a
Spread
glove.
is 20.
That's real nice. I gotta like that stuff. And you're talking about Matt Campbell, currently sitting on one of the hottest seats of all the college football coaches, and you just know that if he's able to pull the rug out on Oklahoma here, the temperature
goes away.
It gets turned down immediately.
He's back to being the genius again.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
What's Oklahoma doing? They're looking at Texas. The last 5 years before Texas, they're 0-5 to the spread, Oklahoma. I think this is a natural fit for Iowa State in this game.
Yep, going against both teams facing each other next week, Iowa State and Kansas. Also, I just wanted to mention the TCU West Virginia game because hats off finally to Neil Brown for getting his 3rd straight win for the first time for West Virginia, beating Texas Tech, even though, again, the quarterback did go down, but still give him credit because they're playing with their backup quarterback. So they've done a good job. Look, TCU's been a lot better than people thought after losing to Colorado. Yeah, that's because TCU's no good. Apparently, it's not. TCU's a good team again. Morris, the kid who took over, a quarterback, is having a nice little season. But TCU was just 1-14 against the spread off a double-digit straight-up win when they take on a team coming in with revenge, and they covered and won the previous game. That's the spot that TCU was in against West Virginia. It's 13 points. That's a lot of points. They're not showing respect to West Virginia, good that they've been playing lately. So I'm going to go ahead and take the points.
I agree with you. Neil Brown's got his football team playing as well as he's been since he's been a head coach with the Mountaineers in the contest here. I never doubted the talent that came back with TCU this year. And, you got to figure Sonny Dykes did not all of a sudden forget how to coach football.
No.
After being blasted by Georgia in that football game, he had a terrific year last football season here. So you have to be respectful of this TCU football team. But what I see is a bigger story developing in West Virginia and the fact that they've come out of their cocoon and they may end up being a formidable football team that even makes it to a bowl this year.
All right, let's talk about Pac-12 football. And this is a good time to post the futures, by the way. on the screen. These are the current bargain futures. Actually, not futures, Heisman. Let's get the Heisman in there. So these are the top Heisman options, and I have a new one, and I know it's a low one, but you got to put Michael Penix Jr. in there, and you have to say that, sort of like I was saying with FSU. Yeah, it's 4-1. I don't really advise people, because I don't do it a whole lot myself, of wagering on stuff at 4-1 at this point in the season, because anything can happen. He can get hurt. They can lose a couple of football games against a very tough Pac-12 conference, and then you're not going to win the Heisman if that happens, more than likely. But I just have to reference him, because if anybody out there wants to put money on Michael Penix at 4-1, I'm all for it. Go ahead and do it. I mean, the guy has been amazing. They're just doing things that I don't think we thought that they would do offensively. And he has 3 pro receivers to throw to. I mean, those guys aren't going away unless they're injured. So it's going to be tough to stop. There's a new guy on that board, 2 new guys. I mentioned Washington State in the futures. Why not put Cameron Ward out there at 45-1, the quarterback of that team? And also, hey, you know what? What's Drake May doing at 40-1? I just realized that's a pretty good number for Drake May, considering they haven't lost a game yet. So he has to be somebody that you'd want to consider as a nice little Heisman sleeper if Mac Brown can actually get North Carolina to be a lot better than people think.
I would make him the sleeper on the whole list, Drake May. First of all, he's got to get through the ACC, not through appears to be a rugged Pac-12 so far this football season.
Yes.
And let me ask you this: where is Caleb Williams?
Yeah, he is. I think he might be now the second choice.
Okay.
So let's throw him on the board here. He is at 4-1, so he is barely like a 0.40 away from Michael Penix. So he's basically even with Penix, but Penix is the slight favorite.
Penix wins the photo. Okay, I got you. Okay.
All right, so let's talk about the Pac-12. We'll start with the game on Friday night. We got a doozy, Utah, Oregon State. The big question, Cam Rising, is he playing again? Nobody knows. I think Oregon State's in a pretty decent spot here because they're coming off a revenge factor. They got blown out last year at Utah, so that's always something that can come into play. They've also, I know that they didn't cover against San Diego State, and that stopped the streak. But until they go with that second one, it's still an impressive run because they had covered 11 straight home games since 21. So now it's 11-1. So that's still very impressive. It's only 3 you're giving up. I think it's 3.5 right now. Yeah, to me, it's just all about Cam Rising. I think if Cam Rising plays, all bets are off. If he doesn't, I'm all on Oregon State in this game. And that does not take anything away from Utah. By the way, they have an edge player by the name of Jonah Ellis, who looks like he's going to be a superstar. He's not going to get the recognition he would on the East Coast, but if you watch the game on Friday night, you're going to see somebody that could be a top 10 draft pick when he comes out.
Well, the scouts are all over him for sure, and the strength of that Utah football team is their defense. So what's going to happen in this Oregon State football game? Who knows? If like you say, Cameron Rising's there, the number changes quite a bit in the football game. I think it's a real tough football call in this contest here. Oregon State getting tripped up at Washington State, they'll be focused in this contest here. And Utah doesn't lose too many Pac-12 games. I think it's one heck of a football game to watch on Friday night.
Absolutely. Now, as far as the Saturday games, you got Caleb Williams and USC against Coach Prime in Colorado. Still no Travis Hunter. To me, we said it last. I'm not taking Colorado without one of their top players. Just not going to do it. But it is another big spread. We talked about last week that it wouldn't be a surprise if they got blown out because it was right there. Coming off the Colorado State overtime game, it was there for the taking. This is college. You don't win every game. But now all of a sudden, I'm just not all of a sudden just going to give up on Colorado because they have one bad game. I don't see it. So this is a dangerous game, and it's a lot of points to give up. But again, without Hunter, I can't really touch the game myself.
Well, as you mentioned, it is a dangerous game, and USC has to approach the game as this is Colorado, the football team that surprised the nation early on. It's exactly what Oregon did last week, and I think that's the same approach that Southern Cal needs in this football contest as well. The question becomes is whether or not Coach Sanders, can convince his football team that they were red-faced embarrassed, and he guarantees you won't see that same football team playing this week. I think it's real difficult of a handicap to do here because you don't know what you're going to get from Colorado.
Yep. And the other big game is the Washington-Arizona game. You guys talked about this as your college football game of the week. Washington is now giving up 19.5 points, Well, we talked about their offense, and they're very dangerous. I'm not going to be overly concerned. I know the quarterback, Delora, may not play, but I'm not, in a game like this with a lot of points, I trust Jed Fish. I like what I saw out of the kid, Fafita, last week. Fish is an offensive guy. This kid Fafita could be a really good quarterback, so I'm not overly concerned with that. It's just a lot of points, just a lot of points to be given up. An Arizona team that we've talked a lot about on this show, that just as they're getting close, they're really getting close to turning the corner and being a relevant team, and they're waiting to just win that first big upset, the one that just shocks everybody and puts Arizona back on the map. So that would scare me in this situation.
I think they're a football team that is flying under the radar right now. They're one of only 24 college football teams that has yet to be beat in the stats this year, which says a lot about this football team. 4-0 in the stats. They've not allowed more than 355 yards in any football game they played. They're going up against the number one offense in college football, 592 yards a game for Washington. But it's the Washington defense that's a little bit of a concern to me. They're allowing 363 yards. That is not championship material. And I think Arizona can continue to catch teams napping. And if this game reaches 20 come Saturday, I'll certainly be on the Arizona Wildcats.
Well, that's the thing. We can sit there and we can get mesmerized by how great Washington's offense has been, as well as it has been, but they have not faced an offense yet.
Nope.
So we don't know, just like with Texas, we don't know how they're going to respond, because next week and maybe this is they got 2 weeks to go, but we even brought this point up about, is it a look ahead if your next opponent is Oregon, but you have a bye before that? Does that really constitute a look ahead? Are they looking ahead, or maybe they're looking ahead at the bye? Hey, we're going to get a week off. So it could happen. Either way, I don't look at it as a good thing. Maybe not as much of a distraction, though, like it will be possibly for Texas and Oklahoma. So AAC, I just want to mention one game. Even though the other game between the Mountain West Conference and AAC teams, Memphis and Boise, could be interesting. And I'm taking Boise because Memphis is 3-12 in their last 15 as a home favorite, including 0-1 this year. But I want to bring up South Florida and Navy, because Navy, we're still trying to find out, what they look like with the new head coach and all. And so far, they've been off to a good start. They've outgained all three of their opponents this year, except I guess Notre Dame. I don't think they outgained Notre Dame.
No, they didn't. No.
Yeah, so they've outgained, I guess, every team since Notre Dame. South Florida, though, is the real team I want to talk about. Alex Golesh, by the way, he is a Matt Campbell disciple, and he's also a Josh Heupel disciple. So he comes from some good coaching pedigree, and I think after what we saw with the Alabama game, after what I saw last week against Rice, the quarterback looks really exciting and dangerous, and I just think that this team is for real. I think South Florida is going to be a player this year in the AAC.
Well, they could well be a surprise team, and a tip of the hat to them if they are. I think that because of my database, there's a really good technical spot here for Navy coming in this football game with a week of rest to get ready for the contest here, and it tells me to be on Navy in the game. I'm not going to fade that, and I'll find out for sure or whether or not USF is a football team that is for real this year. They're playing some surprisingly good football.
In the Mountain West, I wanted to point a couple of things out. One, UNLV won another game. So I love what's going on there with UNLV. And by the way, Hawaii did not cover another home favorite game last week, as we talked about. So that trend continues. Air Force, they were off to a great start this year. So they've won each game by double digits. And maybe that's a team to keep an eye on. But I want to talk just quickly about, did you watch how Wyoming beat Appalachian State last week?
Yeah, that was kind of freaky to see that. It was a long flight back home for Appalachian State, I'm sure about that. But it also plays to Craig Bowl and his football team at Wyoming and how they don't raise the white flag there in Wyoming. And you hang around, and all of a sudden you get a break and good things happen to you. I think they got to feel pretty good about themselves in Wyoming right now.
Yeah, winning a game, which happens, if you're a favorite team, you do that once every 20 years. You don't win games on blocked field goals for touchdowns. In the Sun Belt, you got a big game between James Madison and, a matter of fact, I think, because I have these, by the way, as the three biggest under the radar games of the week, and they all happen to be in the Sun Belt. Coastal Carolina at Georgia Southern, South Alabama at James Madison, and Troy at Georgia State. These are all excellent games in the Sun Belt. I'm taking George Madison against South Alabama. I'm taking Georgia State against Troy, and I'm staying away from the Coastal Carolina Georgia Southern game. But these are 6 of the best teams in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, Sun Belt's really, really improved. And you asked me in our notes whether or not James Madison is the team to beat in the Sun Belt Conference. My answer to that is no. The team they're playing is the team to beat, South Alabama. A very good football team here. They're coming in off a loss, and last year they doubled their wins from 5 to 10, and their record is, statistically is even better than it was last year. They brought 18 starters back from that team. They'll be a little bit disappointed in playing real hard in this football contest here. I think they go into Asheville. Is it Asheville? No, not that. I'm sorry. That's not. I'm thinking that's Appalachian State. I think they go into James Madison and pull the rug out on the Dukes this Saturday.
Well, let's keep this in mind, though, too. And this is why, I mean, South Alabama had a disappointing loss last week against Central Michigan. But just keep this in mind. You were talking about all the starters that came back. They had 3 dynamite receivers last year when they had a really breakout year. One of them graduated. The other one, Devin Voiston, lost for the year, out. So they're down to 1. So now all of a sudden, that's a completely different offense now from the explosive 3 they had last year to just 1 this year. And their safety, one of the better defenders on the team, also done, out for the year. So they have a couple of big injuries to just keep an eye on. And last year's South Alabama team beat 1 team with a winning record. Just 1. A lot to like. They came from pretty much nowhere to being relevant, but a couple of things that we got to keep an eye on to find out, okay, are they for real or not? Well, let's see. Go and beat James Madison, because James Madison is off to a really good start so far this year.
We'll see if the attrition continues at South Alabama this week.
Yep.
If they win the football game, I think they can overcome that. If they don't, it could be time for the what's going on at South Alabama question.
And Georgia Southern, Clay Helton has done a nice job. You know, he brought the transferred quarterback in from Tulsa. They're off to a really good start. That's why that's going to be a really good game against Coastal. And I just love the job Sean Elliott's doing at Georgia State. You know, that maybe this is the team to beat. I mean, they're off to a great start. They've beaten Troy 3 straight times. They've got a dynamite offense, and they're the home team this week. So, yeah, I think Georgia State is also a team that you want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, they don't get a lot of credit. Their name, Georgia State, Georgia Southern, they get kind of mixed up between the two of them. But Sean Elliott has done a real good job with this football team. A win here against Troy would be a big feather in their cap.
All right, and just finally, a couple of quick things. You got the MAC, Northern Illinois at Toledo. That's a nice little rivalry. Northern Illinois has covered 19 of the last 25 games as a road dog. And the road team in that series has won 4 straight. And then meanwhile, in Conference USA, you got the 2 new teams, Jacksonville State taking on Sam Houston State. And Sam Houston State has scored 10 points this year. So that ain't going on. Then the defense has done well, but offense not so much.
Now, Rich Rodriguez is drooling at the prospects of taking on Sam Houston State this week and continuing that surge that Jacksonville State is
State, yeah.
Yes,
they're off to a nice start.
Right. Exactly.
And then, by the way, again, with the picks, I'm going to ask you to, they're the upset picks. I got 3 of them, double digits, Nebraska, Kansas, and Michigan State. So which of the 3 are you liking the most?
Well, I think you know which is the 3 I'm going to.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty easy. Yeah.
That's Kansas. Okay.
Yep.
Only simply because I thought they could pull the rug out on Texas earlier in the show, and nothing's happened since. So.
That is true. That was an easy one. All right, so that's going to wrap it up. Again, check out the Playbook Experts YouTube channel. That show is already available. By the time this one's on every week, that one has already been on. And, of course, you can go over to playbooksports.com. We got the link in the description area. And you can choose a host of handicappers for information, including, of course, Mark Lawrence. Mark, thanks for doing this as always.
And when you go to that playbooksports.com website, check out my interview with Billy Walters. You're going to find that to be really, really an interesting interview for sure. Greg, thanks a lot. Best of luck to you this week, and I'll look forward to doing it with you again next week.